Dick Van Dyke has been working in the entertainment industry for 60 years, and he's still at it today at age 96. Dick has a variety of things that help keep him young, including his 50-year-old wife. While the beloved star feared at the start of their marriage that fans would label her a gold digger, the public has kept an open mind to the staggering age gap. Dick remains incredibly candid about the concerns some might have about the relationship and isn't afraid to address them head-on. Join Factsverse as Dick Van Dyke finally addresses the rumors about his wife. When Dick Van Dyke first broke out into the entertainment industry over 60 years ago, few could have predicted that the beloved entertainer would still be around today. He's currently 96, and he's still dancing like he was during his prime. This past Valentine's Day, Dick took the opportunity to show off those seemingly immortal dance moves, as well as his much younger wife. For the past 10 years, Dick has been married to a woman nearly half his age. While 50-year-old Arlene Silver would certainly be no spring chicken to the average beau, the fact of the matter is she's 46 years Dick Van Dyke's junior. To celebrate Valentine's Day 2022, Dick and Arlene posted a video showing the two of them singing and dancing to the song Everybody Loves a Lover, which Doris Day popularized in 1958. That was around the time Dick Van Dyke was first breaking out into the entertainment industry, and before Arlene Silver was even born. The video showed that Dick still has the moves, and the beloved entertainer says he has Arlene to thank for much of his continued vitality. According to Dick, Arlene loves to sing and dance, which is something the two of them do every day. While one might imagine Dick's praise of Arlene is one-sided given the immense age gap between the two, it seems this is far from the truth. Arlene seems just as deeply in love with Dick as he is with her, claiming that Dick is one of the most perfect human beings she's ever come into contact with. According to Arlene, being with Dick is always like being under the influence of happy pills. In 2007, they first happened upon each other. The occasion was the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and Dick was there as the presenter chosen to give former Mary Poppins co-star Julie Andrews her much-deserved Lifetime Achievement Award. When it came time for Dick to get his makeup done prior to his appearance on stage, it was Arlene who was tasked with powdering the beloved entertainer's face. Arlene recognized the star and attempted to make conversation by bringing up Mary Poppins, which was released before she was alive. Dick took her attempt at conversations kindly, and the two found themselves getting along. According to Arlene, the age gap was never an issue. After meeting Arlene, Dick Van Dyke had already had two very long and serious relationships throughout his lifetime, and he wasn't really looking for another. However, he found himself stricken with the makeup artist, despite his concerns that the public might balk at the relationship's age gap. According to Dick Van Dyke, he thought there was going to be a public outcry as soon as he made his relationship public. He claims he was afraid his fans would label Arlene a gold digger on account of his $50 million net worth. Thankfully, if any fans were worried about it, those concerns have likely been put to rest now that Dick and Arlene have been happily married for 10 years. They celebrated their 10-year wedding anniversary 2 weeks after posting that Valentine's Day video. When they met, Dick was 81 years old and Arlene was only 35. Now, 15 years later, they're just as in love as they've always been. Besides his relationship with Arlene, Dick claims he has numerous other tricks that help him feeling young at age 96, including lifting weights, running on the treadmill, and water aerobics. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around for more about Dick Van Dyke and Arlene Silver. While Dick certainly credits his loving marriage to Arlene with much of his continued vitality, he also claims he has other tricks for staying healthy in his twilight years. He likes to stay incredibly active, going to the gym upwards of 3 times a week. His favorite thing to do there is apparently water aerobics, spending a majority of his time in the gym's pool. He also likes to lift weights and run on the treadmill. Besides that, he stays active at home by singing and dancing. This includes the time he spends singing and dancing with Arlene. According to Dick, he'll start tapping as soon as he finds himself on solid ground. The star also keeps a winning sense of humor in his old age, attributing much of his vitality to good genes. He also apparently feels he's lucky that he's never been ran over by a bus. When Dick was younger, he smoked and drank, which are two things the star evidently gave up many decades ago. According to Dick, the important thing for people to realize in their lives is they just need to keep on moving, whether that means exercising routinely or simply moving on from the past. One might think Dick is incredibly blessed to be able to do what he does at his old age, but he still has his struggles. According to him, he suffers from arthritis and numerous other issues that work to impede him during his workouts, but he perseveres. He didn't start singing and dancing until he was already in his 30s, so maybe he's making up for time now. The star has always been incredibly optimistic, claiming he's rarely fallen into a funk that he hasn't been able to talk himself out of. With the star having appeared in happy-go-lucky pictures like Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, this positive attitude makes a lot of sense. Arlene Silver is Dick Van Dyke's second wife, with the star having been married for nearly 4 decades previously. His first wife was a woman named Margie Willett. Dick married Margie in 1948 before breaking out into the entertainment industry. They had 4 children together. They were officially married until 1984, although they allegedly separated in 1976 after it came out that Dick had been involved in an affair with actress Michelle Triola. By the time the two divorced, they'd been married for 36 years. Decades later, Margie passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2008. She was 81. Following his separation from Margie, Dick entered into a serious relationship with Michelle Triola that lasted for nearly as long as his marriage to Margie did. Dick and Michelle remained together until the latter's death. While Dick's marriage to his first wife was more family-oriented, his marriage to Arlene Silver is all about having fun. The two claim their marriage has become a second childhood for the both of them. They say their romance is something out of a fairy tale, despite the fact that Dick is nearly twice Arlene's age. She was born in September of 1971, at which point the Dick Van Dyke Show had already started and ended its production run. He was on to the new Dick Van Dyke Show, but that show sadly didn't live up to the hype. Arlene spent the early years of her childhood in New York before moving to California with her parents in 1981, where her mother worked as a bank clerk. Arlene always had dreams of living an extravagant Hollywood lifestyle. Before meeting Dick Van Dyke in 2007, the closest she ever got was doing makeup for award ceremonies. Dick seems to be happier and healthier than ever at age 96, and it looks like his marriage to Arlene Silver isn't ending anytime soon. If the public was concerned Arlene was a gold digger initially, those fears have likely fallen by the wayside over the past 10 years. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite Dick Van Dyke role ever? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.